that. I wasn't talking about anything important, so hopefully you didn't miss much. But yeah, having problems receiving the stream. Yeah, buffering. I'm just going to make sure that my phone isn't for some reason. No, it's not on the internet. On the internet. But I'm back. Hey, dude, says Robert on Periscope via Twitter, because this is going out on Twitter, you know. And yeah, Drew is there. Hi, Drew. How you doing? We've also got Jeremy Goff. This is my replacement to having a semi-intelligent chat at my Catholic club, and I'm not a Catholic. Well, yes, let's dig in, shall we? Okay, so I'm going to fire up the map on the screen here. Let me just press the button so it appears. There you go. So that is Bahrain, and I'll give you some idea of where it is in the world, because I think that's always nice, isn't it? You know, if you know where things are. Okay, so where are you? Are you in Europe? Then Europe is there. You can see I've got a little heart in Durham because that's where I am at the moment. Oh, I've lost connection again. This is terrible. I might have to do something about this. So yeah, that's Bahrain there. I'll just zoom in and okay, and I'm gonna put that there, right? So you can look at Bahrain for a moment, and I'm gonna stop it, and I'm gonna try and sort out the internet. So I will be back in 1 second. Okay, 1 second. Hello, I'm back. Sorry about that. I just ran upstairs and turned a bunch of things off. I don't know if it'll make any difference, but sorry about that. Okay, right. Back into the map. I'll get the map back up. Let's have the map. Okay, so where were we? We were looking at Bahrain here. And yeah, you'll see that it is an island. If you didn't already know that. It's an island. And it is between this place called Daman, which is in Saudi Arabia, and the peninsula of Qatar, which is down here. There's Qatar sticking up there, like some kind of sex toy. And then we can zoom in on Bahrain, and you'll see straight away that there is a massive bridge. Well, it's actually a causeway, which comes all the way down from here to Bahrain. It goes past this big island here called Al Nassan. And Al Nassan here is actually a private island. So it's a private island that's owned by the royal family, the what are they called? Khalifas. Yeah, it's owned by the royal family, the Al Khalifas. I don't think I should have ran so fast up the stairs. And then you got Jeddah Island up here. I think people can go to Jeddah Island, but this one here, I don't think this is open to the public. And if we zoom in, we should be able to see. Oh, there you go. Look, you can see a palace down there. Look at that. That's definitely a palace. That looks palacey, doesn't it? Looks palatial in the desert. They try their best. A lot of the water that they get in Bahrain is from the sea. They have lots of desalination going on. So here's Bahrain here. Now at the bottom of Bahrain, where you can see there, I'll show you on the satellite, but there's bugger all. It's just like desert and stuff. It's just all deserty desert kind of things. But if we go up here, where Manama is, you'll see there's a lot more cities. So that's just basically Metropolis or Mega City 1 or something. I'm actually going to turn the labels off. So just give me 1 second. I thought I already turned them off, ready to do this. But never mind. You will notice that there's lots of weird shaped islands. Like there's one there and it's just shaped like a kite. And then that one's got a corner on it. And What's going on over here? Look at this. Right, that looks fake, doesn't it? That looks like someone's just, I don't know, put a little thing over the map. No, it's not. That's real. That's there. Weirdly enough, you can sort of see what used to be there, I guess, under the water or something. I don't know what's going on. But this is going to be a huge, big, new living residential complex for over 1,000 people to live in, and it's just been reclaimed from the sea. So originally, back in the day, the kingdom, the emir of Bahrain was made up of 33 islands. Now it's made up of 84. They increased the land area by 38 square miles, which is insane. And if I zoom down here, look at this. Look at this madness. They've got this, I don't know, they've got these fish. They've got some horseshoes in the ocean. These are massive. They've got a big circle. They've got a little Hanukkah over here. I don't know why they've got that in a Muslim country, but, whatever. And then zoom out a little bit, and you'll see that's all desert. There's probably a landing strip there or something. I don't know. But if I go back to the map, and we go over here in the desert, let's have a look. I've turned the labels off, so it's disappeared now. You should be able to find... There it is. There's the one. There's the badger. You should be able to find the Tree of Life here, which is a tree in the middle of nowhere. Look at this. It's insane. This is all desert, right? And then there's just a tree. There's this random tree in the middle of nowhere. It's it's really, really quite bonkers. But, there you go. And the one other thing you need to know before I just discard the map entirely is that although Bahrain is just this bit here, now, it used to be this whole area from Kuwait, all along the coast, all around here to the United Arab Emirates, and all the way into Saudi Arabia, quite a long way, used to be called Bahrain. So that whole area was called Bahrain. It wasn't just the island. Now it is just the island. So enough of that map. Back to me. Hello, everyone. Did you miss me? Back in the grain. We lost you for a second. We back yet? Damn you, BT. World-beating internet. Yes. Changed planes in Doha once. Says Gaz. Doha's in Qatar, mate. You're miles away. Well, you're not. You're the next country over. Always the naughty English. Lol. I was born in Bahrain. Says Darian. Yes, we've got a Bahrainian. We've got somebody who's born in Bahrain. I'll have to be nice. I might not be nice at the end, but I'll be nice for most of this. Bill Mayer on private education, which you will like, Graham. Oh, but Bill Mayer's American, isn't he? Darian Dastar says, I used to know the current sheik's great-grandfather. Oh, that's very random. It was a very different country back then. Yeah, indeed it would. Vincent says, wow, that map wouldn't look out of place in the GTA game. Yeah, GTA Bahrain. Let's bring it. When I was there, the country was 32 miles long. Yeah, it's certainly changed a lot. Darian says that there's a book called In Search of Gilgamesh that posited that Bahrain was the origin story of the Garden of Eden. Now, you wouldn't believe me unless I actually showed you my notes, but I was going to mention that. In a moment. We'll get to it. I just need to check if I can get my YouTube chat back up because it's disappeared. I'm gonna have to. Sorry about this, but I am gonna have to go on to YouTube again. It's driving me crazy. I'm gonna have to. Oh, I can see myself from a few moments ago. It's really surreal. It's like, when you're watching like a science fiction movie or a TV show or something, and they meet themselves, and it's weird. That's what it's like watching, like time delayed by 5 seconds on this thing. It's just weird. It's just weird, right? That's that one. Let's close that window, and then I'll open this one. Oh, isn't it fun watching somebody open and close windows that you can't see? Yes. Right. Let's go to the end. There you go. Gilgamesh. That was the last message, wasn't it? Yeah, it was. Good. Okay. Hello. Unless I've lost contact again. Who knows? Right. So that's your ballpark about Bahrain. Look at the state of it behind me. This is Bahrain. It's all very, very built up with the profits made from seals. They club seals and they sell the blubber. No. Oil. Of course it's oil. But let's start at the beginning. Let's go way back in the midst of time as we talk about the history of Bahrain. First of all, there's evidence of human settlements there from 10,000 BC. So there's been people there for a very, very long time. From about the time that we sussed out boats, I guess, because I don't know, maybe it wasn't an island back then, but people got there somehow. Anyway, this gave... there's Stone Age history dates back to about 5,000 BC when they've got actual artifacts and things to prove that people were there. And then we had the Dilmun civilization, Dilmun, and the Dilmun civilization existed from nearly for 3 millennia, from 3,200 BC to 330 BC. I mean, that's a good innings. You know, most civilizations peter out after a couple hundred years. You know, they kept going for three millennia, and their influence spread as far as modern Kuwait. Like I said earlier, like that whole area used to be called Bahrain. Their influence spread all the way across Saudi Arabia to the Al Hassa Oasis, which is the biggest oasis in the world. I think it's got 1 million palm trees in it or something mad. And the evidence of this great civilization is found in the 85,000 burial mounds that are scattered across the island, the main island of Bahrain, and it makes up 5% of the entire landmass is burial mounds, which is quite phenomenal. Hey, Akbar Ali, hey! Bahrain used the Indian rupee as its currency until 1965. I have no idea why. Well, it's funny you should ask that because, well, you should state that it was because of the British influence. It's because the British had Bahrain as a protectorate at that time, and it just made sense for people to use the Indian rupees, which had Queen Victoria on them at the time. But yes, they did, which is kind of weird, but there you go. Thank you for that fabulous fact there, Akbar. Okay, so we were talking about the history, we were talking about the burial mounds, and then 5% of the island's landmass taken up with these burial mounds. Anyway, so the development of the place really fitted the fact that there were these subterranean aquifers which provided sweet or potable water that people could actually drink, which meant that Bahrain was actually referred to as the fabled Garden of Eden at one time, and also it was described as paradise in the Epic of Gilgamesh. So for those not familiar with the Epic of Gilgamesh, it's not something that I think we get covered in the British school curriculum. It was a precursor. It was an epic poem, and it's one of the oldest in the world, if not the oldest. And it was a precursor for a bunch of stuff, not least possibly the Old Testament, and also Homer's Odyssey and Iliad, because there was themes, things that happen, stuff like that we find in the saga of Gilgamesh, and also we find years later in the Greek tragedies, the great Greek writings of Homer. You know, whoever Homer was, if it was one person, we don't know. But yeah, so Gilgamesh tells the story of a guy, and the gods make this other guy to fight him, and they fight, but then they become friends because they respect each other in battle, and then they go out and have adventures together, and then one of them dies, and he's like, I'm going to avenge you or retrieve your soul from the afterlife, and he goes and talks to one of the guys who was on the ark with Noah, and all this stuff happens, and it's all very it's a good story actually. It starts off that Gilgamesh is this scumbag. Absolutely, he's a ruler, he's a king, and he's not a demigod, because he's not half a god. He's 2/3. He's 2/3 a deity and 1/3 human, which is weird. But there you go. Must have been an interesting night. But yeah, so he starts off the story and he's a gobshite, and then by the end of the story, he's learned not to be a gobshite. There you go, progression. Got to change in these things. Years and years and years, centuries, millennia later, we're still using that same tried and tested formula for Hollywood movies all over the world. Mostly Hollywood, obviously, which are sold all over the world. Anyway, so the Greek historians or geographers, if you want to call them that, Strabo and Herodotus, believe that the ancient Phoenicians actually came from Bahrain, but there's no evidence of that. But the Phoenicians were kick-ass. The Phoenicians were this tribe of people, basically, but we think they're from the Near East, so sort of Israel area, and they were the first people to circumnavigate Africa in a wooden boat. In a wooden boat. When I was in Comoros in 2009, I actually met up with some people who were sailing on a recreation of a Phoenician vessel to see if it could be done. How cool is that? And they succeeded. They did it. They went all the way around. They went all the way around Africa in a wooden boat. Anyway, so in I'm getting ahead of myself there. They traded a lot of Omani copper at the time, which was measured using the Dillman standard, and then around 1800 BC, the strength of the Dillman sort of dynasty, whoever was looking after the place or ruling it, sort of started to decline. And by 600 BC, Dillman was absorbed into the Empire of Babylon. However, like that's Mesopotamia, that's modern day Iraq-ish, around there. However, they were still kind of allowed to do their own thing to some extent for another few hundred years. And it wasn't really until Alexander the Great's ships arrived in 323 BC, keep up at the back, that things started changing a bit. The Greeks were there for about 100 years, but their influence on Bahrain stayed for a very, very long time. In fact, the island that we now know and love as Bahrain was called Tylos for nearly 1,000 years, from 330 BC till about 622 AD. So that's quite a long time. And then until the late Middle Ages, like I was saying, the Bahrain referred to the whole region of Eastern Arabia. It included southern Iraq, it included Kuwait, all the way to the Al-Hassa Oasis, as I've said, Qatif, and also what we know now as Bahrain. The region stretched from Basra in Iraq to the Strait of Hormuz, not the Strait of Hormuz in Oman. And this was known as the Bahrain province. And the exact date at which the term Bahrain just referred to the island has been lost in the midst of time. But it was probably some time after Islam arrived. So AD 628, the local ruler was a guy called Munzir ibn Sawa al-Tamimi, declared that Islam shall be the new religion of Bahrain, and so everyone had to become Muslim. And it was one of the earliest places to adopt Islam. In fact, Muhammad was still alive when they adopted Islam, and one of the first mosques in the world was built a year later. Unfortunately, there's not much left now, but at the time it was not much left of the original. It got rebuilt in like the 11th century or something. But that's one of the oldest mosques in the world, is in Bahrain. And then and it's called the Al-Khamenei's Mosque, by the way. Or it might be the Al-Khamis Mosque. I might be pronouncing that completely, incredibly wrong. If I am, I apologize. But it dates from around 629 AD. And Muhammad didn't die till 632 AD. So, he was still around. He could have visited his own mosque and gone, look at this mosque. This is boss, this. Not that mosques were built for Muhammad, but mosques were built to praise Allah, not Muhammad. Muslims don't worship Muhammad. It's quite important that you make that differentiation. They worship Allah. The idea that they worship Muhammad is actually blasphemous. So let's not do that. Anyway, so when I mentioned the sweet water, the not the beer, but the fresh water that they could get in Bahrain, which made the place so valued. Because don't forget, it's surrounded by desert, to say the least. It's a little bit warm. It also meant that because of these undersea aquifers, so this water would bubble up basically from these undersea aquifers. So I guess you'll have sea. I'm not a geologist. And then a bit of rock, and then underneath that you'll have some fresh water. The fresh water comes up, and that made the oysters of the area very unique and gave them a unique colouring, a particular colour and lustre to Bahrain's pearls that was prized around the world for centuries. And these pearls led Bahrain to becoming one of the most important trading posts, not just in the Middle East, but literally in the world for a long time, which was a mixed blessing. Obviously, pearls, great, just take them from the ocean, get some money, whoop. But also it attracted others. It attracted people like the Portuguese to start with. They turned up in their big boots in around 1521. They invaded, seized Bahrain, built one of their typical sea-facing forts. They built dozens of them all around the Persian Gulf. Their rule lasted for 80 years in the 1500s. And they were expelled at the start of the next century by Abbas the First. I almost said Abbas one there. Professional, Abbas the First of the Safavid Empire, which is basically the Persian Empire. In 1602, that was. So it was the very start of the 17th century. And that ended the Portuguese rule and began 200 years of Persian rule. Now, this is where it starts getting interesting, right? Because now you have this country that is firmly between Saudi Arabia, which is Sunni Islam, and Iran, or Persia as it was then, which is firmly Shia Muslim. And now they've invaded and they've taken over this place, and people are converting to Shia from Sunni. Okay? Now, watch what happens next. Anyway, so in the mid-18th century, the Al Khalifa family first arrived in the area. So they drove out the Persians around 1783. Okay, so nearly 200 years later, they were driven out by this royal family who still rule Bahrain to this day. And that royal family is Sunni. Okay, so now you had a majority population of Shias ruled over by a ruler who was Sunni. Okay, can you see where this is going? Yeah, you probably can. We've got some messages here. I've read a bit about Gilgamesh, but not a lot. It's a great little story. King of Babylon. In these strange times, it's almost a miracle. Bahrain means between two seas, says Darian. It does indeed. I had to relight this as I think it reset. Others might need to do likewise. Sorry, we've been having some internet gremlins tonight. Blame BT and also my location. If I was in Liverpool, if I was in my hometown of Liverpool, I'm pretty sure we wouldn't be having these problems. We'd have super fast, hyper-dynamic, broadband, optic, whoopoo internet. But as it is, but I've got a cash dummy. Wait, sorry, not a cash dummy. I've got a super chat. That's what it's called. Super chat from Cash Dummy. Thank you very much. Can't get enough of Hughes the World. More of it as we travel stories from a record. As we can't travel stories from a world record holder of a massive asset, Graham. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you. That's really nice. That's really sweet. I'll tell you what though, I can't read. I've only had like 2 sips of this bloody stuff. I'm trying to keep me throat lubricated. Michael says, all right, guys, need to work for Easton as a butcher this weekend. All the best. I don't know what that means, but cheers, Michael. Jeremy Goff says, been there, Darian. My aunt was at art college with Bruce Oldfield. They shared a flat. She stayed on and met my uncle and moved to Bromley. Small world, I'm 200 miles away. What? Okay. Damien says, when I was in Bahrain, you could still find cannonballs in the desert around the Portuguese fort. God, that's insane, isn't it? They must have used it a lot for reasons which I will come to in a moment. So these Al Khalifas were themselves basically given the back heel by an Omani invasion. And there were various invasions by the Omanis and the Al Sauds, who now rule Saudi Arabia. Yep, same people. And in 1802, fun little bit of trivia this, Bahrain was effectively governed by a 12-year-old called Salim, who was the son of the Omani ruler. He just went, Salim, come in here. And Salim's sitting, he said, oh, we're going to play football, Dad. He's like, no, I want you to go and rule Bahrain. And he's like, what? I'm 12. What's wrong with you? Anyway, so I think they got rid of him one way or another. I think it might have all got a bit Game of Thrones there. But in 1820, the Al Khalifa lot came back. They returned to power after signing a treaty with the UK. Now, bit of context here. During the 19th century, that whole area of the Persian Gulf was known as the Pirate Coast because there were loads of pirates there. So I think all the pirates from the Bahamas, once they were kicked out the Bahamas, they sailed halfway around the world to the Persian Gulf and set up shop there. And Bahrain, cute little Bahrain in the middle, it said that it didn't engage in piracy, but it didn't really object to piracy either. So it made a lot of money through selling stuff to pirates and buying stuff off pirates. They knew they were pirates, but they went, hey, money's money. What are you going to do? So the British did a treaty, not just with Bahrain, but with other emirates in the area, which would, a lot of whom would go on to become the United Arab Emirates. And this deal was called the it was a treaty, a truce, and it made the Trucial Nations. I hope I'm saying that right. I've lost me place. Basically they wanted to secure, the British wanted to secure a trade route with India. That meant that they weren't getting attacked by pirates. So the Al Khalifa family said, hey, you hate pirates, we hate pirates. How about you give us protection to basically rule over Bahrain and do what we want? And the UK said, yeah, okay, we'll do that as long as you backheel any more pirates activity. And they said, okay. And this was the deal. It was called the Trucial States, and it was brought into place by the 1820 General Maritime Treaty. So it was a system of protection. So the local emirs didn't allow piracy. The British would protect them against any invasions from, I don't know, Persia or Mesopotamia or Saudi Arabia or what doesn't exist, Arabia, any of those places. They had to sort of, make sure that their backs were covered, because these were tiny little places. And a lot of these places were kind of a bit concerned about the big boys in the area. And the biggest boy in the area at the time were the Ottomans, the Ottoman Empire operating out of Constantinople, Istanbul. And they were really concerned about being taken over by somebody else. So they said, British people, can you help us? And we'll help you. However, this led to later treaties, notably in 1861 and then notably in 1892, when Bahrain effectively became a colony of Britain. Some have seen this as an invasion by stealth. And like I said, they managed to keep the Ottomans at bay, and British influence is still there to be seen today in Bahrain, especially in public parks and the landscaping and things. But Bahrain didn't gain independence until 1971. And in that time, the people ruling Bahrain were not allowed to make any international agreements or host any foreign agents or any diplomats or anything like that without British consent. So how fair it was, how much the Bahrainians got out of it versus how much the British got out of it, I think the British probably got the better end of that deal. However, in 1932, something seismic happened. And no, it wasn't an earthquake, but it did come from the earth. They found gold. No, not gold, but black gold. They found oil. Bahrain was the first place in the Arabian Peninsula that where they found oil, and they found it right in the middle of the island. Pretty much, there's a museum there now. You can go visit the museum where they first struck gold, like the Beverly Hillbillies, I'm sure. Basically, the discovery of oil couldn't come at a better time for Bahrain, because at the time, some bright spark had started selling what they call cultured oysters. Well, no, cultured pearls from the Far East, where basically the pearl farmers, instead of pearl fishers, you had pearl farmers, where they set out, I don't know how they do it, like a tray or something, put oysters on it, put it in the water, and got pearls. And as a result of that, it meant that the value of the pearl, which was what gave Bahrain its riches, and kept its economy going effectively, was gone off a cliff. Meanwhile, the price of oil was skyrocketing around the world, and helped out by things like World War II, when everyone was like, shit, we need loads of oil to move all these things around so we can blow each other up. And Bahrain prospered mightily. And it used the oil revenues to modernize the country. In the 1960s, I think there was a bit of a deal going on whether they wanted to join the UAE along with Qatar and obviously the 7 emirates that make up the United Arab Emirates at the moment, so Abu Dhabi and Dubai and all that lot. And they turned that down in the same way that I think, a little bit after the event, but Singapore turned down staying with Malaysia. It was Malaya. There was a country called Malaya, which was Malaysia and Singapore. And then Singapore said, no, after a couple of years, I don't want to be independent. So Malaya became Malaysia and Singapore. Same sort of thing, almost. And in 1972... 1971. 14th of August, 1971, Bahrain declared independence as a protectorate of the United Kingdom, and it went its own way, which was great for the people of Bahrain, I guess, because they didn't have to do what the British wanted them to do anymore. It's funny that. Jeremy Goff says, sorry, Graham, Darian and I are having a side chat. Cool. Cash Dummy says, Bahrain became a British colony by stealth, while British Brexiteers accused the EU of colonising Britain by stealth. I smell projection. Oh, yeah. Oh, come on. Brexit is the ultimate projection, isn't it? It is the ultimate projection. This whole thing about independence. That's what they had on the front cover of the Sun. Independence Day. And there's like 173 countries around the world that have declared, well, not that many, but there's a lot of countries around the world that have declared independence from the UK. And now we're going, yes, we're independent. It's like when you go to Turkey. You go to Istanbul, and they've got like Independence Square. And you're like, you were the seat of the Ottoman Empire? Independence from who? What? How does this even work? But yeah, whatever. So basically... Bahrain trucked along until the end of the 20th century, when the country was shocked by sort of sporadic waves of unrest. Troubles began in 1994. Riots erupted after the emir, the leader, refused to accept a large petition calling for greater democracy. There was more unrest in April 1995, and then in the spring of 1996, there was actually a bomb in which 2 hotels were blown up. But on the 6th of March, 1999, the end of the century, Sheikh Isa bin Salman Al Khalifa, who was the leader, the emir at the time, died, and he was replaced by his son Sheikh Hamad bin Isla Al Khalifa Hamad. So let's just call him Emir Hamad. And Hamad pledged to introduce fully elected parliament and hold municipal elections and establish a constitutional monarchy. But up to this point, they weren't a monarchy. They were emirates. So what happened? Well, a couple of years later, he declared himself king. So the Sheikh Hamad became King Hamad of Bahrain. It became a monarchy this century, this side of the millennial line. Which is kind of crazy. What have we got here? We got the Bahrainis were actually getting rid of British in terms of control, but they did it in a very controlled fashion. Yeah, I mean, history's taught us one thing: if you're getting rid of an old regime and replacing it with a new one, have a transition period, have a long transition period. If you try and rush it, it nearly always ends in disaster. So they were one of the countries, along with other places around the world, like I don't know, Brunei. They only got independence, I think, in the 80s. I think I'm gonna have to look that up. But again, they just did it at their own pace, and it was a smooth transition. It wasn't anything like the horrors we saw in places like Kenya, where people uprising were put to death, or even worse in India, Pakistan, where 1 million people died as a result of the British pulling out pretty much overnight. 4 months. They pulled out in 4 months instead of 5 years. I'll be covering that more in the next show, actually. Anyway, so was a withdrawal agreement involved? Probably, yeah. Dari Interstar says, the Caliph has told the British, American, Australians that they had to start replacing their immigrant workers with Bahrainis. That's a bit of an irony there, considering what Bahrain is like now. Jeremy Goff, a gap in my knowledge here. Given the oil find and Hitler coming to power a year later, did the Middle East have a role in World War II? Yeah, I mean, one of Hitler's big goals was to get the oil in the Middle East. And that's one of the reasons that he went through Russia, was to try and get to the oil at the time in Azerbaijan and further afield in what's now Iraq. And as far as he could get, because all of that area was either under British protectorate or a French protectorate. Germany lost all of its overseas possessions after World War I, so places like Upper Volta, which is now Burkina Faso, and northern Papua New Guinea, and Nauru, and Namibia, all these places that were German places. Tanganyika, which is now Tanzania, that was German. They all handed over to the British or the French or just someone else. Togo in Africa as well, in West Africa, that used to be Togoland. That was a German colony. And they were all chucked out after World War I, and Hitler had plans to get it all back. He wanted his empire back. And getting to oil was a big part of it, and it's also why obviously they spent so much time and attention in the African desert, in the Saharan desert, hence the desert rat, Rommel, all that kind of stuff. It was a big part of World War II, and it's one of the reasons why it was the World War. It really was. I mean, World War I, was it a world war? Was it really a world war? Because I don't think there was that much fighting in Africa. I know there were Australian troops that came over were stationed in Egypt and went across to Gallipoli in Turkey. But apart from, I don't know, there were troops, I guess, coming from around the world, from the British colonies around the world and stuff. But I don't think it was a world war, was it? Was the fighting in America? Was the bombing in the Pacific? I don't think it brought the whole world. There's some scholars have called the First World War the European Civil War, which kind of makes more sense, to be honest with you. World War II was definitely a world war. I think Antarctica was the only continent that really wasn't involved in any way, shape, or form. Okay, so I'll move on. Adrian Wilson says, big agreement, Graham Hughes. Projection is a core characteristic of the entire Brexit mentality and self-justifications. Yes, Adrian, it really is. Somebody wrote, one of my friends wrote on Facebook a couple of years ago. He said to someone who was doing this projection, said, "Stop projecting. You're going to burn your light out." It's like stuck at me as a great expression. Stop projecting. You're going to burn your light out. In the 1930s, this is from Darian. The Sheikh employed his own British advisor. Can't remember his name, but he got a third from Oxbridge. The guy was told to get money, but he had to give his allegiance to Bahrain. So the Bahraini royal family had someone to give them solid advice along with dealing with the British. Bahrain was far more of an oil refining country than an oil producing country. Well, it is now, definitely, yeah. Adrian Wilson, oil wasn't well developed. had Army Group South got to Baku and sealed off the Caucasus in 1942, they may have gone further south at some point, would have started with Abadan in Iran. So Adrian basically sort of backing up what I'm saying, that Hitler did have his eyes on getting to the Middle East and getting that oil. Humphrey Bogart, African Queen. Oh yeah, that's a good point actually. That was set in World War One, wasn't it? And it's also got one of my favourite lines in movie history. If anyone watched my shows from November when I was broadcasting from the living room, I've actually got an African Queen poster up in there, which you could see behind me over my shoulder. And I just love the line where like Mr. Walnut, Humphrey Bogart's pissing off the side of the boat, and Kate Hepburn is just absolutely, how dare you? She's like, oh my lord, she's playing like a nun or something. She's like, oh it's disgraceful, and Mr. Walnut says, it's only natural, isn't it? It's just nature. And to which the Catherine Hepburn says, nature, Mr. Allnut, is what we were put here to rise above. Which I always thought was hilarious. Anyway, and it's kind of good. They blow something up at the end. Adrian Wilson, I'm certain Britain did have contingency plans to evacuate Egypt to protect oil supplies deep in the Middle East, especially Iran, if German Army Group South threatened them from the Caucasus. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's the case. U-boat to a World War One development. Well, there you go. Alex Morgan, £10 super chat. Thank you, Alex Morgan. Woo! I'm super late. Apologies. We'll catch up. Okay, no worries. And then we got the Bahrain flags, but they haven't actually come up on my. They've not come up on my YouTube chat, but it's come up on my Restream chat. So yes, thank you for my Bahrain flags. Darian Desar says, one thing that's worth mentioning is that Bahrain was always a free state. It never acknowledged slavery, and any slave who got to Bahrain was a free person. That is a fascinating bit of thing. I didn't know that. Thank you, Darian. God, I'm learning here. Right, so I'm gonna. Oh my God, I've only got 10 minutes left. I'll just go hurry up. I'll give you an extra 10 minutes because obviously I was faffing around trying to get the internet to work. Oil was the core aim of 1942's Operation Blue in southern USSR. Oil shortages were constant, a colossal problem for practically all branches of the Weimar throughout World War II. They got bogged down in Stalingrad, didn't they? 9 words from Drew. Hi, Drew. Is Bahrain a very welcoming human rights campaigners or not? It's not. It's not, which I'm going to come to. It's better than other places in the area, but let's get to this. So, the 14th of February, 2002, I was in Madras. It's now called Chennai. I was in Chennai in India then on that day. Bahrain was declared a constitutional monarchy, and the as you know. All these reforms came in, the violence came to a halt, and the national charter a year before was ratified by the first ever national referendum in Bahrain. So we had its first king, King Hamad, who up till then was a sheikh. Women were eligible to vote and stand for office. There was a system of financial controls and administration had been created to ensure transparency in government finances. However, 8 years later, in 2010, still half of the government was still the Al Khalifa family. By the way, the Burj Khalifa is named after the president of the United Arab Emirates and the emir of Abu Dhabi. Okay, they're related, but it's a different family. Okay, so it's not. The Burj Khalifa is not named after the Al Khalifas. It's different. Basically, in that time up till 2010, sort of Bahrain had diversified from oil. It's gone into offshore banking, became a commercial hub. Tourism became a much bigger thing. It started hosting the Bahraini Grand Prix, not the World Cup. That's Qatar. In 2004, it started hosting the Grand Prix. But then in 2011, the Arab Spring, which started in Tunisia and moved over to Egypt, and then it moved over to Syria, which is still going on to this day. But also people rose up in Bahrain. And the response by the authorities was absolutely brutal. The ruling Al Khalifa family was criticised for violating human rights of groups, including dissidents, political opposition figures, and the majority Shia Muslim population, 70% Shia Muslim. Yet the ruling royal family are Sunni. And this was always going to be a point of tension. It still is to this day, unfortunately. Not just the king of the country was from this family, the Al Khalifa family. The prime minister for 50 years nearly was from the Al Khalifa family as well. He ruled from 1971 until November. Last November, he died. Last November, he was prime minister of the country for 49 years. It would have been bloody hell. And he's been taken over as prime minister. The guy who's taken over from him is the king's son. So basically the Prince Charles, whatever his name is, he's taken over, and he's now so the king's eldest son, Prince Salman bin Hamad bin Isa Al Khalifa, is now the prime minister. So the king, prime minister, and basically half the government are from this one family, and it pisses people off because they feel like they're not being represented. There was a sustained campaign of non-violent civil disobedience. This is back in 2011. And then there was a deadly night raid on the 17th of February 2011. And this was targeted against the protesters. It was deadly, and it led to calls not just for political reform and democratic reform, but to actually get rid of the king. And at that point, alarm bells started ringing. They saw what had happened in Tunisia by that time. They saw that what was happening in Tahrir Square in Egypt at the time. They were like, screw this. We're not going to stand for this. And they managed to get the UAE and Saudi Arabia to send troops in and tanks and all sorts into Bahrain to quell this uprising. They used to meet on this roundabout called the Pearl Roundabout, and the actual Pearl Roundabout was destroyed by the government on March the 14th that year because it's where they all met up. The police response was described as brutal on peaceful and unarmed protesters, including doctors, bloggers, and the like. By the way, in 2011, the UK government, after this happened, sold over £1 million worth of military equipment to Bahrain. Yeah, because we're nice like that, democracy. That's right. That's why we invaded Iraq. Democracy. We were holding. Anyway, so since then there have been accusations of torture, and there has been the use of the death penalty in Bahrain over the last 10 years. So in my estimation, I was there in 2010, and it seemed to be on the up. Things were getting better. People were becoming more free. And then the last 10 years, it's sort of gone, oh, sod that. Let's start regressing, shall we? And make life just a bit more miserable for everyone for no good reason. Am I talking about Bahrain or am I talking about the UK? I mean, you could say the same about either. But there you go. So, like I said, the old Prime Minister, Khalifa bin Salman Al Khalifa, who had the name Khalifa in his name twice, like Boutros Ghali, which is a fantastic name. He died last November, on November the 11th, and the King's eldest son took over as Prime Minister. So that's the situation in Bahrain today. Obviously, they've taken a massive knock to the economy because of COVID, which they're going to have to get back on the horse on, I guess, especially if they're going to continue building all these artificial islands, which I think probably aren't cheap, and the fact that the cost of living is probably pretty high. So here's a few fun facts. So they use the most electricity of anyone in the world, apart from Iceland and Norway, because of all the aircon, so the most electricity per person. As its place in between Saudi Arabia and Iran. So Saudi Arabia is Sunni and Iran is Shia majority, and they're in between, and they're a Shia majority country that is ruled by a Sunni ruler. They're kind of like Clint Eastwood in A Fistful of Dollars. Like, they play one side off against the other. They get support when they want it from Iran. They get support when they want it from Saudi Arabia, and they're kind of not boss mates with either. They just kind of stay in between and just try and, muddle through. But it's worth noting that the Fifth Fleet, which is a huge fleet of American ships, they're based, or it might just be one ship actually, just a big one, is actually based in Manama. It's based in Bahrain. It has been for years. It was a founding member of the Gulf Cooperation Council, the GCC. It's a member of OPEC and also obviously a member of the United Nations since 1971. What it's like? It's hot. It's bloody hot. It's a desert city that is full of booze. Basically, it's the Las Vegas of the Arabian Peninsula. That's the best way to describe it. Every weekend, and the weekend starts on Thursday, and it ends on Saturday because they have a weird shifted weekend thing. You see thousands of Saudis crossing over the causeway from Saudi Arabia over into Bahrain to just live it up for the weekend. And so the dress that people wear over in these Gulf countries is called a dish dash, and it's this white gown that comes with a headdress. Now, if you want to spot if someone is from Saudi Arabia and not one of the other countries like UAE or Bahrain or Qatar or Kuwait, if they've got black bands around their head, they're usually not from Saudi Arabia. Most Saudi Arabians don't wear them because they see them as a crown, and no one can be a king except for God, something like that. The Saudis have a bit extreme in their interpretation of Islam. I think the further you get from Mecca and Medina, the less people take the religion quite so seriously. Then again, I mean, there were the terrorists living in Islamic terrorists living in Mindanao in the Philippines. They take it quite seriously. So let me take that back. That doesn't make any sense. But yeah, so you have these people coming over there, and when I went there, I was only there for one night. I wasn't there for long. I stayed with a bloke called Tim, who was a US Navy lieutenant, and we'll say lieutenant, but they say lieutenant, whatever. He was a lieutenant, part of the US Navy's Fifth Fleet. We went to KFC. We found an Irish pub, because obviously there's going to be an Irish pub everywhere. And I'm in this Irish pub. I'm having a drink. And a little demonstration there. And next to me in the bar is this guy, and he's wearing his full dish dash. He hasn't got the bands around his head, so I think he must be from Saudi Arabia. So I said to him, "All right, mate, where are you from?" And he said, "Oh, I'm from Jeddah." I said, "Oh, that's cool. Are you having a good time?" He's like, "Yeah, I am." I said, "What are you drinking?" He said, "Oh, Johnny Walker. It's great stuff." And I'm like, "I thought you're not supposed to drink." And he goes, I'll never forget this. He goes, I don't drink in Saudi Arabia. I don't drink in Saudi. But tonight I am in Bahrain, and Allah cannot see Bahrain. I was like, that's brilliant. You want to put that on the tourist literature. You want that on the sign as you're driving over the causeway. You want a big sign saying, Bahrain, Allah's blind spot. Yes, let's go. So yeah, it's kind of party central. And everyone's like, are we supposed to be partying? It's like when Mormons go out and go crazy. Mormons are allowed to go out and go crazy for a little bit. It's a bit like that. Or is it the Amish? Is it the Amish who go out and they have like this thing where they go into the real world for a year and then they get scared and come back? It's one of the two. Probably both. Okay, so going to jump into the comments before I bid you adieu for another evening. U-boats were around in the 1880s already. I know they were used by the US Navy back then. The first ever built U-boat was the Brandtrucker, a German U-boat that sunk in 1851. Wow. I know wasn't there a submarine that was used in the American Civil War. Someone correct me on that in the comments. Chubai says, submersibles have a long history, but you sure about the diesel electric U-boats? Darian says, sorry, the response to the uprising was dictated by the Sauds. It's horrible to see what's happened to Bahrain because of Saudi Arabia's influence. Yeah, and who's propping up Saudi Arabia at the moment? Who's turning up and holding on to that big crazy orb thing from Lord of the Rings with them going, ah! Well, Donald Trump, who's selling them all the weapons that they're using to bomb Yemen at the moment. We are! Oh, well, we're just going around getting democracy. We're just giving democracy out like sweeties. Come and get some democracy, kids. Except when we're selling literal things to kill children to these countries. Emphasis on the first syllable. Cash Dummy says, around 2011, a lot of Arabian despots got nervous about the Arabian Spring, and yet Assad is still around, losing half the population of his country, ruining it. Yeah, Cash Dummy, but he was backed by Russia. So whereas the Bahraini uprising was put down with the help of Saudi Arabia, using probably weapons that were sold to the Saudis by Western powers, well, Assad is still in power in Damascus because he was backed by Putin. He was backed by the Russians. He would have been out on his ear. The rebellion against him was massive. They had taken over Homs. They had taken over Aleppo. They were coming to Damascus, and if it wasn't for the Russians coming along and helping them out, why? Why would they help out al-Assad? Well, because a lot of al-Assad's money is in Russian banks. Anyway, hit that like button, says Cash Dummy. Yes. Graham, you're forgetting, if you don't sell them arms, someone else will too. Oh, yeah. They'll just buy their arms from Rwanda, because Rwanda make loads of, top-of-the-range tanks and fighter jets and wasn't that Maggie's son selling arms to Bahrain, allegedly? Oh, I don't know. Didn't he try and invade Equatorial Guinea? Bloody lunatic. I wish you never found him in the desert. Adrian Wilson says, in the Gulf, protests are frequently perceived and or portrayed as cat paws of Iran. Bahrain as a participant in a Saudi-led coalition in Yemen. Yeah, well, that's because the leadership of Bahrain is very much on the Saudi side, whereas the people are more sort of leading towards Iran. But don't forget, when I say that there's a split of religion, don't forget the actual ethnic makeup of the people. Most of the people who live in Bahrain, they're Arabian, and that's different from being Persian. Very different. If you go to Iran and you say, oh, you're an Arab, they'll probably kick you in the head. They're the most politest, sweetest, most lovely people in the world, but they really hate being called Arabian because they're not ethnically Arabian. They are ethnically Persian. So you got this weird mix in Bahrain where you have people who are ethnically Arabian, but the religion tilts a little bit towards the Shia side of the street, and it creates problems, and it's so frustrating when you see these things happen around the world, especially when you've got two sides which are really similar, and you're like, what? Can't you just get together and have a party? I mean, you look at Northern Ireland. The Protestants and Catholics still don't mix to this day. In fact, if a Protestant marries a Catholic, it's called a mixed marriage, for God's sake. Which is a shit term to use about a marriage where it's a black person marrying a white person. You shouldn't be using it. It's just like, what? Mixed? What? But, we found out this week that Britain isn't racist. And then we also found out there was a Met officer who was a Nazi. A literal neo-Nazi working for the police, and that's aside from the murderer and the alleged rapist, who are also about to stand trial for their crimes. Okay, great. 9 words. I cannot see Bahrain. Bangladesh next week, says Gaz Riley. Can't wait. Yes. I don't know what I'm going to do about the flag next week because I really hate the Bangladeshi flag. It's just so shit. It's like green with like a red ball in the middle of it, a red circle. I don't know. It irks me. That flag. But never mind. Let's have a look at the comments before I leave because I've got a few left, I think. You will be brilliant at geography now when that gets to the UK. Yeah, I'll get on that because it's going to be... Well, do you know what? The UK might not exist by the time they get here. What are they up to? Are they up to West? They did a fun one today. If you want to check it out, Geography Now, check out the video they did today for this country that's in the Andaman Straits going down towards the Malacca Straits. Check it out. It's good. It's something that I considered doing on this one, but I decided against it. This is all legit. This is all kosher. Darian the Star said, when I was a kid, I was in the car with my sister fighting with her. My mother told us that if we kept fighting, she'd stop the car and spank us. We kept fighting. So my mother stopped and dragged us out and gave us a spanking. But then the sheikh came along in his car and thought my mum was being respectful. So he stopped his car and told my mum how happy it was that Westerners show respect. Okay, cool. Cash Dummy wants a dish dash for the summer. Yeah, okay. I still have my white linen dish dash from Dubai. Very cool when under the sun at 40 degrees C. Damien the Star. And then he invited me and my sister to come to his horse stables to learn how to ride horses. Best fight I ever had with my sister ever. That's such a great story. So the sheikh. Oh my God. Jeremy Goff says, we booked containers on United Arab Shipping and we joked in the office that they were untouchable as they were owned by various Middle Eastern countries. A USA sea ship would cause a ceasefire by passing through. Indeed. Cash Dummy says, yeah, there was a famous submarine used in the American Civil War already. It was called the H.L. Hunley. That's a snappy name, isn't it? Darian says, I got incredibly drunk in Bangladesh. Do you know what? I never got drunk in Bangladesh. I got incredibly drunk in Bahrain. I got really, really drunk in Bahrain, I have to say. You can talk about the placement of the red circle in the Bangladesh flag. 9 words from Drew. Drew, mate, honestly, if you want to just irk me, just... There's a great... what are they called? It's the little Stickman cartoons, XCLD or something, and they've got one where it's if you really hate someone, show them how to spot bad kerning, which is the space between letters. And someone pointed at a sign, go and look. The kerning's once you notice it, you can't unnotice it. So the circle on the Bangladeshi flag is a little bit off from the centre. It's like it just went up to everyone with obsessive compulsive disorder and was like, right, but we'll talk about that next week. UK's disintegration could lead to some more Hughes of the World videos via new countries created out the Uber shambles Brexit dividend. Actually, I'm going to do the home nations of the United Kingdom as separate countries in this, so I will be coming to England under the E's. And Wales eventually when I get to the W's in 17 years' time. You can't be a great moon new in Northern Ireland. I can't even do that. Graham, the placement of it has a good reason for it. Go on, find the reason, explain it next week. Okay, Drew, I will do that. So, thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed this edition of Hughes of the World, where I've taken you to the Middle Eastern kingdom, the newly minted kingdom of Bahrain. Although I'm saying newly minted, you do realise that 2002 was almost 20 years ago. Sorry to bring that up. Alex Morgan, only just noticed that in the Bangladesh flag. Why, Graham? Why? Why indeed? We'll find out next week. Maybe Wangland in 18 years. Yeah, let's do that. Okay, thank you very much for joining me, and I am back tomorrow for another round of Brexit reality at 1 o'clock. Otherwise, I will return for Hughes of the World at 10 o'clock next Thursday, when I will be taking you on a glorious adventure to the land of Bangladesh. So until then, I will say fair winds and following seas.